Oh, we are so back. Guys, that was my fastest setup time to date, and I haven't recorded in over a month, so I'm extremely proud of myself. I'm so happy to be back and recording. I feel like I don't remember how to do this, but hopefully I do. Thank you for sticking with me over the last month while I didn't put out any episodes. I actually had an episode scheduled to record an interview the week of the fires in LA, so obviously that didn't happen. And then I just felt like it would be really insensitive to be posting about my podcast while all that was going on. So that delayed things a bit. And then, as I mentioned on my Instagram, if you follow me, I have just been getting into the flow of grad school. So that kind of has affected my schedule and my time management. And yeah, it's just been a lot over the last month. Also, weirdly, even though I retired, I feel like I've been working so much in the last 6 weeks. So yeah, I just didn't really have time for the podcast, which sucks because I enjoy doing this so much. And that was kind of one of the things that held me back from putting this out, is that I knew that it would be an adjustment when I started school, and I was worried about how that would work. But I just needed to make school my priority over the last 6 weeks. And yeah, going forward, I think it's actually a good lesson for me because I am such a perfectionist and I want things to be done exactly the way I think they're going to be done. So it's good for me to have to be flexible and have to adapt. And for you guys, I think that might just look like maybe I don't have an episode out every single week. Maybe it's one a month or two a month. So we're just going to play it by ear and see how things go. But yeah, I'm excited to be back here yapping to you guys, and I hope you enjoyed this episode. So if you do follow me on social media, you will have seen that I posted a little question forum, as today's episode is a Q&A. I just thought it would be a good way to jump back into things. I've been wanting to do one of these, just open up the floor to questions from you guys. I said that it could be about modeling or about my personal life, so I did get a mix of both. I am going to start with the modeling questions since that's what we're here for. Actually, one of the questions I got was about school, which I feel like is a good place to start. Well, someone just asked what I'm going back to school for, and I think I might have mentioned it in my last episode, but I am getting my master's in psychology, clinical psychology to be exact, which means that once I graduate, I will go on to get my license, which I'm going to get the LMFT, which is licensed marriage and family therapist. So my goal, which might change, but right now my goal is to do pediatric therapy. So that's what I'm going to school for. I got into Pepperdine, which is super exciting. I still can't believe I'm going there, and it's been amazing so far. Like I mentioned, it's a huge time adjustment, but I'm just really enjoying getting back into learning and meeting new people. And yeah, I just love psychology so much. So it's been super amazing so far. And it's a 2-year program, so I should be done in 2027. And then on the same category of like life and work, someone asked, what's the scope of you quitting modeling just as a profession, or you no longer are interested in shooting in general? And the term quit was like a loose term because I'm obviously still doing it. I just decided that it wasn't going to be my focus anymore. Modeling is a full-time thing, and you have to be building your book and going on castings and doing your social media and even like socializing with other people in the industry, and I just feel like that's not my focus anymore. So when I say quit, I just kind of mean like shifting my focus away from it, but I'm still doing it. I'm still shooting, I'm still working, definitely still doing creative shoots. If this is a photographer asking, I'm still doing shoots, especially with friends. I still love being creative and collaborating, but yeah, it's just not my main focus anymore. And as I said before, I left my agency, so that was kind of like the quitting that I was talking about. I got a couple of different questions pertaining to OnlyFans. One of them was if I ever felt pressured by my agency to go down the OnlyFans route, which I definitely didn't. I feel like my agency never really pressured me one way or another, and they never said anything against it. Like, I know there were girls represented by my agencies that did do OnlyFans, and I don't think that they got any flack from their agencies. For me, it was just because I was doing a lot of commercial work with older brands and like brands that were kind of like family oriented, like Target and stuff like that. I just felt like having that type of connotation like might have pushed some of those clients away. And just for myself, it just didn't really resonate with the image I wanted to put out there, like what I wanted to do. Someone also said that they want to do risque shoots, but they don't want to be seen as an OnlyFans girl, and if I have any suggestions. So on that same note, I feel like when it comes to your image, you kind of just have to do what you want and what feels right, and not really think about what other people think or what other people's opinions are. I definitely did worry about how people would judge if I were to do OnlyFans, because people are obviously insanely judgmental, but it wasn't like my main reason for not doing it. So yeah, and I always did sexy shoots. So I would just say that you have to do what you want to do at the end of the day. If you want to do OnlyFans, if you don't want to do OnlyFans, if you want to do sexy photos, if you don't want to do sexy photos, I think you just have to be the navigator of that ship and just know that there might be judgment from people, but you just kind of have to like let it roll off your back and do what you want to do. I will say, like, in terms of future planning and how that might be received by clients, that might be something to think about. Like if you want to go down a really commercial route, or you want to do something else one day, like think about your digital footprint, I guess. But yeah, do what you want to do. I got a couple of questions about New York and LA. One of the questions was, why is the LA market so different from New York? I would just say that LA doesn't have really a high fashion market. It's way more geared towards commercial, like a lot of acting, a lot of casual brands, like beachy brands, stuff like that. And New York is obviously way more geared towards high fashion. I think it's just the way it is. That's kind of like the ethos of both of those cities. And I would say, like, from a modeling perspective, LA is just like way more laid back. New York is more serious, kind of the nature of those two beasts. And then someone also asked, they said I'm very brave, which I appreciate. And they said, where did you find the courage to walk down unfamiliar areas in New York City and go to casting calls? And actually, it's something I've been thinking about a lot lately, because I started when I was so young, and I really just moved out to these cities knowing no one. Packed up my stuff one day and came out to LA, and same thing with New York. And I think it was probably attributed to the fact that my frontal lobe wasn't developed, and I just kind of had no fear, because I think if I had to do that right now, even thinking about moving to a different city at this point in my life, like, it's really scary. So to think that I just went from New Mexico to New York is pretty crazy. I think I was just young and excited about it, and yeah, I just didn't really think of the scary parts. I was mostly just focusing on how amazing the opportunity was and how excited I was to try these new places out. And in terms of going to unfamiliar areas to go on casting calls, I just like didn't really have a choice. If you've ever seen America's Next Top Model, that's kind of how it was in real life, especially because when I started, I think Carrie and I were mentioning this on our episode, that we didn't have Google Maps on our phone. Your agency would like print out MapQuest papers for you and like send you on your way. So I've been to some interesting places. If you follow me on Instagram, I love to post like the places we will go as models. Like, I've posted some weird places that I've been before for castings and stuff. I did one in like a storage unit. I literally was trying on dresses in someone's storage unit. So yeah, you just got to do what you got to do. Someone asked if I've ever felt really uncomfortable on set, and the answer is absolutely. I don't know if I've talked a ton about this, but yeah, for sure. Unfortunately, I hope that maybe one day it won't be, but thus far that's been part of the business. You know, working with male photographers is sometimes a gamble, unfortunately. Obviously, I've had a ton of amazing experiences, but I've also had some not so amazing experiences. And also, I've just had times where people were just flat out mean. Photographers have made me cry on like actual sets of jobs before. I've been told really not nice things about my body. I had a photographer one time like trying to massage me on set. So yeah, I've definitely had some uncomfortable experiences, and even more so in like test shoots, because obviously you don't have a big crew there with you to kind of monitor the situation. It's just you and a photographer. Sometimes you're like in the dude's house. So I've had a ton of creepy instances with photographers, which is why I kind of don't really do test shoots anymore, because it's just like, it's not worth it. I don't want to be uncomfortable. I don't want to wait for 6 weeks to get photos back. I really try to only shoot with people I know, because there's just a lot of anxiety that comes with walking into a situation where you don't know the person, you don't know their intentions, and you're just like alone, sometimes in like minimal clothing. So yeah, unfortunately I have, and I think that probably every model has. Someone asked, do you write formal contracts for collabs, or do you just wing it? It kind of depends. I think I should be more careful going forward, especially now that I don't have an agency. Obviously, with my agency, there's usually contracts of usage and stuff like that. I haven't run into a ton of problems of people not paying me, like from collabs I've done on my own, but I would definitely suggest that you write out a formal contract because you just don't ever want to mess around with not getting paid. So like set your rate, again, I think I talked about this on the episode about that photographer. I posted a template for a contract if you guys are interested in checking that out, or if you need one to like work off of. But yeah, set your rate, set like what you're comfortable doing and not doing, set like a time period. Obviously there's a lot of like usage stuff too. So if you only want it to be on social media and not in like campaigns, that's kind of stuff that you all have to outline in a contract. So it can be a little bit difficult if you're doing it on your own, but would highly, highly recommend doing so. Someone asked the best compliment I've ever received, and I feel like that's probably just in general, but since we're talking about modeling, I feel like when it comes to compliments on set, I really like being told that, like, just appreciated for my hard work, because I really pride myself in being a hard worker and like giving 100% when I show up on set. When people acknowledge that and like admire that, I really feel validated. So I really appreciate, just people noticing my work ethic and especially my efficiency. I try to make shoots efficient. So when people like recognize that, I really like that. I got a couple questions about like my favorite job or like the peak of my career, which it's hard to say because obviously like things blend together so much, but also like I've enjoyed so many shoots for all different reasons. I would say maybe the peak of my career was when I booked my first guest campaign. Number one, because I actually did a guest model search when before I was even modeling, which if you're watching the video, I'll like insert some photos, but I made it to the final round and it was super exciting for me and didn't end up getting chosen as the guest girl. But then years and years later, when I was modeling for guests and then ultimately got a campaign, it just felt like a really full circle moment for me. And although my opinions about the brand have kind of changed because of things that have happened and I don't work with them any longer, it still was like a really monumental moment for me. I remember like calling my mom and my grandma and just like freaking out. I might have even cried. And so that's still such a special time in my career for me and was kind of one of those like I made it moments. Guess was also the first brand to put me like on photos in stores, which was cool to go see myself in the stores. So that was probably like one of the highlights of my career. Also just my first booking. I worked for Abercrombie and Fitch as like my first job. Again, I like remember getting that phone call like so distinctively and just having one of those like, oh my God, I made it moments. Someone also asked the best brand trip ever. I haven't really done a lot of brand trips because I'm not an influencer. I think honestly the only ones I ever did were also with guests. The coolest one was probably when we went to Montana. We got to do a lot of like outdoorsy stuff, like ride horses and do archery, and it was just like stunning. Montana is so beautiful. Oh wait, it wasn't Montana, it was Jackson Hole, Wyoming. So beautiful, like one of the most stunning places I've ever been. I really love like the woods, I love horses, like all that stuff. So got to live out my little cowgirl fantasy. That was super fun. What else do we have here? Someone asked what the male model perspective is, like if they're taking advantage as much as women are in this industry. And I can't really speak to that because I'm obviously not a man in this industry, but from what I know from friends and having an ex that was a model, like there is a lot of terrible stuff that also happens to men. On average, men actually get paid a lot less than women as models. So that's another way I feel like they're taken advantage of. But I've heard some really, really awful horror stories from men in this industry. And I would love to have a male model on this podcast to talk more about that, because also I think it's really important. If you guys heard anything about the Bruce Weber stuff, the Abercrombie and Fitch stuff, if you haven't, I'd recommend going and watching that documentary. It's really messed up, but just gives you a little bit of a glimpse into what the industry is like for men, and they for sure unfortunately are also taken advantage of. Someone also said more model apartment horror stories. I was dying at the NYC one. Let's see, I have so many because I've lived in so many model apartments. A lot of crazy stuff happened in the New York apartments. I stayed in some other ones besides the one in Brooklyn, and it was just always some fuckery going on. Your roommates like messing with your stuff, things being so disgustingly dirty. Like, girls are dirty. When I showed up to the one in New York, all of the pans were like caked with stuff. It looked like someone had been living there for like 1,000 years and never did any of the dishes. Stains in the beds, just like really nasty shit. Mold growing in the apartment. I lived in one in Miami also, and all of my roommates were from Brazil, which was really difficult because they pretty much only spoke Portuguese. Even though they could speak English, they just like didn't really bother to communicate with me, which was really isolating and sad. I ended up making friends with some of them towards the end of the trip there, but I was there for 3 months and just had a really hard time. Like, I missed home so much. I ended up finally making friends like outside the apartment, but that was probably the most hostile model apartment living environment. And they were also like really, really dirty. And I was the youngest one, but I feel like I did most of the cleaning. And I had gone on a trip to the Florida Keys during this time for like less than a week. And I came back and there were just bags and bags and bags of trash. I might even have a photo of this. If I can find it, I will insert it. Just so much trash. The sink was like piled with dishes and the water was like green in the sink. And Miami, if you've never been there or don't know anything about it, there's a lot of roaches because it's so humid. And so we had like a full blown roach infestation. I'm talking like I would open the cabinet and like roaches would like scatter. It was one of the most horrific times of my life because I absolutely hate bugs. I actually got like kind of comfortable living with them, which is disgusting, but I kind of had no choice. And it was, again, the same type of situation where like we're all in one bedroom, 2 bunk beds, like super close living quarters. It was an experience for sure. That actually also reminds me of one of the other questions. Someone asked if I have any regrets, especially because I'm like kind of quitting now. And definitely not, because I learned so much about myself, about other people, about, just things that you can't really learn in any other way except for experiencing them. And all of the stuff that I've gone through, whether it's good or bad, it's just made me the person that I am today. That sounds so cliche, but it's so true. I just, especially now that I'm older and I can like look back and reflect on stuff from a different point of view, definitely no regrets. I'm really grateful for all the experiences I had, the good, the bad, and the in between. Now I'm going to transition to some more personal questions. There aren't a ton, but I wanted to answer a few. I actually, every time I do these Q&As, I get questions about past relationships, whether it's romantic or friendships that have fizzled out. And I'm not going to like get into the details of that stuff, but I wanted to just give kind of a general answer about that. It's not going to be the salacious version that you may want, the person who asks these questions, but I would just say in general, that's part of life. You grow out of relationships, you grow into relationships, you grow out of things, careers, hobbies, interests, whatever. It's just part of growing up. And like not everybody can come with you. We all change, we all grow, we outgrow things. And, some people are only in your life for a period of time. I would say for any of you who are similar age to me or are in their like late 20s, there's a big transition that happens. Just like when you meet somebody when you're in your teenage years or even in your 20s, you're obviously not going to stay that same person that you were at that age. So sometimes you just grow apart from people and it's not always a bad thing. Someone asked, what are my biggest pet peeves? Oh, biggest pet peeves on set. So this actually is a modeling question. I'll answer both ways. Biggest pet peeves on set would probably just be, like I mentioned before, I'm always striving for efficiency. So when people are just like not doing things in an efficient way, it really drives me crazy. And also people over directing me. Like, obviously I respect producers and directors and all of those things, but sometimes I feel like people, this is just in life, I guess, in general, I just hate when people like over direct or like over explain things. Maybe that's a me problem. And in general in life, I think my biggest pet peeve is probably just people who are not aware of their surroundings or just not aware that like other people exist besides them. So like if you're in a grocery store or the airport and someone's just like standing in the way and like, or stops right in front of you and has no concept that like other people are around them, that drives me absolutely insane. Someone asked if I always leave people on read, which that seems like, are you trying to read me? Speaking of reading, I try not to. I actually feel like I'm a decently good texter. So if I'm leaving you on read, it might be intentional or my ADHD mind just like got the best of me, but I really try not to leave people on read. It actually gives me anxiety when I have like unread messages. So take that for what you will. I got a lot of questions about Cassian, which I was expecting, but I like to keep my private life private. Obviously, I'm doing a podcast, but it is mostly focused on modeling, not like super personal stuff. But I will say, someone said, how did you meet? We'd love to hear the love story. This is pretty common knowledge, obviously, if you know me personally, but Cassian actually slid into my DMs. Hopefully he doesn't mind me telling this story. If it's in the podcast, he approved it. So yeah, he shamelessly slid into my DMs. I was actually seeing someone when he like first messaged me. So it took a bit for us to actually like start having a back and forth conversation. But he responded to a story that I posted about vanity license plates, because I used to be obsessed with posting those. And yeah, he did a good job, because obviously that was a niche thing that I was interested in. And he asked me for coffee, and then the rest is history. We just hit it off right away. So I don't know if that's the level of romance you were hoping for. It's very 21st century core, met online, but we made it out the chat. So that's love to me. Okay, I'm going to do a final question, which I really like. I feel like this is a good one to end it on. They just asked, what are my aspirations going forward in life, and where do I see myself in the next 5 years? I feel like this is always a really difficult question for me, because I do like to set goals, but I've just never been like I'm going to be doing this, this, and this in 5 years type of person. But with school being involved, obviously one of my aspirations is just to finish school and get my license and be working in that field. I would love to get married and start a family. That's definitely something that I've always wanted. I absolutely love kids, which is why I want to work with them. So would love to have kids. I don't know if it will necessarily be in the next 5 years, but at some point. And just like continue to grow as a person. I feel like this year I'm really going to try to put a lot of my time and energy just into myself and focusing on the things that I want to do and things I want to accomplish, and be like really diving into this new career field and making myself proud and doing things that really make me happy, because I feel like I just like hadn't really been prioritizing that for a long time. So that's my priority moving forward. I think that I will stay in LA, but not really attached to that. So not sure if I'll be here, but I will be until I finish school. So also I would love to have continued to grow this podcast. And ideally, I would also love to start another podcast that actually is centered around mental health. That's something that's always been a dream of mine. I really love like Brene Brown, and I want it to be something that's still in the like mental health kind of self-helpy realm, but like more personable and relaxed, not like too self-helpy or like science focused, but yeah, just like a more casual like mental health type of podcast. I really love like talking about like women's health. I think we can all relate to some sort of mental health issue. So I think these type of podcasts are really awesome and important. And yeah, those are kind of some of my aspirations. I kind of blacked out there at the end talking, so hopefully that answered the question. So on that note, I'm going to wrap this episode up. I really appreciate you guys sticking through last month. Like I mentioned, I'm so happy to be back recording. I just really feel so myself and so happy and fulfilled when I'm doing these episodes. So definitely going to make a point to keep it going forward. I have a couple of interviews that I really want to get to in the next couple of months, which I think you guys will really enjoy. And yeah, I hope you have an amazing new year. I know January was a bit of a rough start for some of us, but we just got to keep it pushing. So love you guys so much. Thank you as always for listening, and I will see you in the next one.